Hi, creative minds, and welcome to the Savvy Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Castaneda, and today my guest is an artist with her own online art gallery business, author of Memoir, and entrepreneur who transforms lives through creative and expressive writing. With over 40 years of journaling, she found her authentic voice as a woman and as an artist, which we definitely want to know more. And she is also a regular contributor to the Elephant Journal and lives in Long Island, New York with her husband, their kids, Frisky Cat, and many fishes. Welcome, Marcy Brockman.
Thank you so much, Christina. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and you know,
and you're following. That's all.
Yes,
awesome.
Our creative minds, and we have we have many things in common, but we have one major thing in common, and I have just a sick fascination with this, and that is we are both narcissistic abuse survivors. I had a narcissist parent, I had a narcissist ex-husband, and I even have a narcissist neighbor that I am moving away from in 7 days.
Wow, we do have a lot.
Oh my God, yeah. So your memoir, it's rooted in like narcissistic abuse.
Yeah. So
tell us, like.
Yeah. My mom was, I love her. You know, she's been dead 6.5 years, almost 7 years. And I have, at this point, healed enough where all I have is empathy and compassion and love for her. But being her daughter was hell on wheels. She was bipolar and a malignant narcissist and an opiate drug addict. It was torture. And I didn't know anything else because I was an only child. And, you know, you're a kid, you grow up with the family that you're born to, and you don't really know it's any different than that. And I never knew from one moment to the next whether she was going to be Mary Poppins or Cruella de Vil. Those are my little go-to, like, metaphors. And she could switch at a moment's notice. You know, she kept very high standards for everyone else so that they could prove that they loved her, and she didn't hold herself to any standards whatsoever. She would just manipulate any situation, and she was so good at it. She could convince you that the sky was green and the grass was blue, and even though you knew it was wrong, by the end of the conversation, you were agreeing with her. Like, and I'd leave and I'd be like flummoxed, like, what the hell just happened? You know, she went off her meds all the time. She self-medicated with like a boot-sized shoebox full of prescriptions. And she never worked really a day in her life, but her full-time job was doctor shopping and med shopping. And she was such a pain in the ass with hypochondriasis on top of everything else. And the doctors just wrote prescriptions for her to shut her up.
Yeah, it's because they knew, and you said she was a malignant narcissist, which for people who don't know, like there's different levels and different types of narcissists. Right. And malignant it's like probably the one that takes the cake. It's like the top one where like criminals and psychopaths and
but she wouldn't have hurt anyone else. Like, she wasn't a sociopath in that way. You know, like my ex-husband combined the narcissism with the sociopathy. Is that the word? He was a sociopath. He didn't give a bleep. I don't know if I can curse here, about what he said or did to manipulate or hurt anyone else. You know, like he scared the crap out of me. And he hurt me emotionally and only hit me once. And that should have been enough, but I stayed. The relationship with my mom set up this very sick template of expecting abuse, expecting to not be treated well and recognize it and feel like it was home. And created this like pathological need in me to please other people. Like, it was my God-given innate talent to make other people happy, to anticipate their needs, to sublimate my own needs and my own desires and my own feelings, because I almost felt like I wasn't worthy of them because I had to make other people happy. And when they weren't, you know, what I've learned now is that you cannot make anyone else happy, that you can try, but you'll most likely fail. And the only person you have any control over is yourself. And so no matter how hard I tried to make my mom happy, it didn't work. No matter how hard I tried to make my ex-husband happy, it didn't work. I could placate them, but it was never enough. And then when I would start to show that, you know, what you did hurt me, what, you know, you said that and it hurt my feelings, or you treated me in this way and now my feelings were hurt, they would both get angry at me and freeze me out for having dared to be hurt by their actions and to insinuate that they were somehow responsible.
Yeah, it's because they couldn't deal with the shame, right?
No.
You know, they can't handle with the shame. They couldn't handle with the ownership or take any ownership or responsibility of that,
Absolutely.
right? And the thing about, I know exactly what you're going through as far as the pleasing, because you think, if I just get this right, if we just maybe have the right, set up the right birthday party or buy the right Christmas gift, or, you know,
Right.
if I just look perfect enough, like, because I had a narcissist ex-husband too. I don't think he was a malignant one, but he was definitely a shade of narcissist. But if you always think like, if I could just do this, if I could just do this, things will go well and things will be better, but it just, they never did get better, and they never do change. And that was one of the things that and like you said, like, you feel you're mixing the abuse with love, because you can't tell the two apart. And that's what it was definitely like for me. Now I got to ask, did your mother or your narcissistic, like, people in your life, because you probably attract a lot of narcissists too. Were you ever like the scapegoat or the family mobbing or anybody like?
Well, when I finally decided that we needed to do an intervention because, you know, mental health issues aside, the drug addiction was a big problem for my mother, and it made it worse. It made everything worse. And so I thought, let's do an intervention. And, you know, she wasn't all that nice about it. Obviously, we're all bombarding her and attacking her, and everyone else fell. They folded. They couldn't handle the opposition against her. And so I was left the only single lone person telling her that there was a problem she needed to address. And everyone else placated her. They enabled her. They drove her to pick up prescriptions. I mean, like, so I was the only one who drew the line in the sand and said, okay, so I have kids. So it was 2012 when the proverbial poop hit the fan. And I said to her point blank, it's either the drugs or us. You cannot affect my children's lives. They were terrified, locked themselves in my daughter's room, screaming in terror because my mother became demonic. She just became something else. And I at that moment stopped being the daughter first and became the mother my kids needed. It was like a light switch. I felt it happen. And I threw my mother and my stepfather out, and I said, you're not allowed back here. And that's it. It's either the drugs or us. And she was screaming from my front lawn like it was the middle of a Jerry Springer show. And I closed the door and I made sure my kids were okay. And then I had like the biggest stress-induced asthma attack of my life. And then I calmly, over the next few days, wrote her a letter, because that way she could read it in her own time and digest it and not be able to cut me off, and she could have it tangibly in front of her. And I FedExed it to her so she could never say that she didn't get it. And in it, I very clearly delineated our entire relationship, and I confirmed over and over again, I love you and I want you to be happy and I want the best for you, but the intergenerationality of this mental illness and this abusive relationship and the negative effects of drug addiction cannot go further. And I have to protect my children first. And we never spoke to her again. The next time I saw her, she was in her coffin. Yeah. It was brutal, but it was the best thing I could do, because my kids are, knock wood, my kids are fine, you know? I mean, they still had their narcissistic dad's behavior to get over, but at least it wasn't as worse as it could have been with my mom in the picture. So,
well, anytime you throw drug addiction in there, that's a whole, like, that's like a double whammy, right? You know? And I have to say, honestly, I haven't spoke to my mother. My mother hasn't been in my life since 2008. So, and I had a very similar, I mean, but she's still alive, at least I think. But, see, I don't even know. But, but that was exactly it. And I think there has to come a point where you're just like, you have to, and
the only way to save yourself is to leave.
Yeah. And I have kids too. I have 2 grown kids, 2 teenagers now. And I knew that I was like, oh my God, this is not going to stop. And I had that very similar realization. And I can honestly tell you, just like you, it was the best thing I could have ever done as a mother, as a writer, you know, as everything. And I have to say this, like, Narcissists are a gift to writers. They just are. They're so
Well,
evil.
there's a plethora of stories,
Yeah, exactly. Plethora of stories, plethora of characters. They slowly take off a mask, and they reveal all these things that are
Yeah.
just so like humanly evil. And it just helps. Like every time I think of a villainous character, I think, what would my family do? Like
Exactly.
Yeah. And you're probably thinking about that with your ex-husband and your mom,
Right.
right?
And even after, there was the point where I was contemplating divorce and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to tear my family apart. And my mom and my stepdad were friends with his parents. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And then I was sitting there on the couch and it must have been like 4:00 in the morning. And I just had this realization, like, would I want my children to have a marriage like this? And the answer was unequivocally no. Not only do I want them ever to experience a marriage like this and to feel as awful as I feel, but I didn't want my daughter to grow up thinking this is how she should expect to be treated by people in her life. And I didn't want my son to think that this is how he should treat women in his life. There had to be an end point, and this was going to be it. And so I made coffee for two and I went upstairs. When my husband got out of the shower, I said, sorry to spring this to you on your way to work, but I want a divorce.
I just couldn't wait anymore.
I just couldn't wait anymore. That was it. And he was like blindsided. Like it had never occurred to him that treating me like shit for 12 years and being emotionally abusive was gonna end the marriage. Like it didn't occur to him, and I mean, I had started thinking really about ending it on our honeymoon. I was thinking about, coming back from Canada and just saying, you know what? Sorry, we shouldn't have done this. I'm getting it annulled. My bad. Sorry. Here's your gift back, but I didn't do it. And we had 2 kids, which I'm grateful for. And then it took me 12 years to finally realize, you know what? We all deserve better than this. And then about a year later, he came to my house and thanked me for divorcing him. I was like, wait, are there cameras here? Like, is this a candid camera? What's going on here?
Yeah.
What? And he's like, I would have never had the temerity to make this decision. And you were right. We were much more miserable than I could have ever imagined. And now your bravery has given us the chance that we can all be happy. And I was like, who the hell are you?
Yeah. What do you want? What do you really want?
Right.
Like,
what's your ulterior motive here?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was very crazy.
Yeah. But at the same time, like now, obviously you've been able to put it into something more positive. You wrote a memoir about it. And
I did.
So tell us why this memoir, it led to not only just the actual book and the story, and why you put it in memoir as this particular genre, because it could have been really any type. It could have been contemporary, it could have been anything, but it also led to a business. So tell us about how.
Okay. I have been a high school English teacher for 25 years, and I always feel like it's really the most important thing about my job goes beyond teaching literature analysis and writing, although that's very important and wonderful. And I love that they pay me to do this. It's like the most incredible job ever. But it's to teach emotional intelligence and humanity and empathy and compassion to my students. And the only way I know how to do it is to connect our humanities together. And when kids, teenagers have a limited capacity for seeing other people's position. It's just where they are in their lives. They don't have that much life experience. And so when I share with them, the narcissism and the drug addiction and, the infidelity in my marriage and like all this other stuff, all of these experiences that I've had, I grew up being a shy kid. And then my freshman year of high school, just talked myself out of being shy. And, I just share all these experiences with kids. And over the years, they were like, you know what, you should really write a book. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then in 2015, I started writing articles for Elephant Journal. And between the feedback I was getting from students and the feedback I was getting from the writing community through Elephant Journal and all of the Facebook groups that are involved in that little vortex, I started to think, you know what, maybe there really is a book here. And then I took a Finding Your Voice kind of writing class in last October through Elephant Journal. And I needed a community that I felt safe in to help me start to like bring this forward, because everything that I tell, all the stories that I tell in the memoir are so personal. And I knew that in order to effectively communicate the power of this, it had to be first person and it had to be real. I toyed with the idea of making it fictional and, fictionalizing the stories, but it didn't feel authentic. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like it would connect with audiences the same way, because they would have thought that it was all made up. And I needed it to be real for my own catharsis. And so between October 1st of 2019 and December 12th of 2019, so it was barely 2.5 months, it literally poured out of me, 121,000 words, sometimes in 8 or 9 hour writing sessions. I'd put my headphones on and just disappear into the music, and it just poured out of me. And I still wasn't sure there was a book there. A side note is that I have been keeping regular journals since 1985. And at this point, I have a big Rubbermaid box full of journals and pads and books and so on, and probably several terabytes worth of online stuff, because I sometimes do it in Microsoft Word, or I have an app on my computer. And anyway, so a ton of journals. So not only was it my adult recollections going back and telling these stories from my childhood and telling these stories from my adolescence, but I was able to literally quote myself from younger ages, the 17-year-old me and the 21-year-old me. And so, yeah, I was having a fight with my mom, but my memory of that as a 52-year-old is very different than the actual first person original document from 1986, and so I was writing the book and I was thinking that it really was this expressive writing, this journal writing, that is allowing this memoir to be the long look back that it is. And then I happen to love the novels of a novelist named Craig Lancaster. And I was posting commentary on my regular Facebook page as I was reading some of his books. And it turns out that we had some mutual friends, even though he lives in Montana. His wife grew up on Long Island and was very good friends with a couple of my very good friends. And so we connected through Facebook. And I just went online one night and asked him, how do I find an editor? And he's like, oh, I'll do it. Okay, really?
Wow, that's that easy?
Wow. He's like, I'll charge you the friend and family rate, no worries. And I sent him the book and, the first draft of it, and held my breath for 3 weeks, what is he going to think? Because this not only was my first long form writing, but it was my soul, and he said, the first thing that I want to say is congratulations, you've written a phenomenal book. It's going to need a little tweaking. And he asked very pointed questions that helped me excavate and flesh out and remember dialogue and more elements that you'd expect in fiction, like descriptive things that would help put the audience back into an experience with me. So really writing the second draft was much more emotionally draining than the first draft.
Yeah, because I always wondered that. I had an editor one time tell me, you're too close to because even though it was fiction, it was based on my life, and he said it's too close to you. You have to either change the scene, the character, or change something about it so you can describe it better, and tap into your imagination. And then I realized, sometimes when we just don't know some of the details or we don't think about some of the things that people would notice or wouldn't know. And that was one of the things I feel like it's hard for memoir writers to do and to think like a fiction writer.
Exactly. And I teach creative writing sometimes at the high school where I work. So, I had to apply some of the same lessons that I teach my kids when they're writing fiction. I had to apply it to myself. And it was weird that there was a little bit of a disconnect between the teacher and the writer. And I needed an editor. Everybody needs an editor. I needed an editor to make that connection back for me. And so through Craig's very pointed, very wonderful guidance. He helped me make the book much better after the second draft than it was after the first. But it was through this process that I suddenly decided, what my readers need is a guide or a template to be able to do this themselves, because I found this process to be so cathartic and so healing for me. I found a deeper, significant compassion and forgiveness for my mom, and I found a deeper compassion and forgiveness for my humanity, for myself, than I had been allowing myself before. The graciousness that I now see myself through is amazing, because anybody can only live their life and only behave in a way that is consistent with the tools that they have and the knowledge that they have about themselves and the world. And so I was doing my best to find my way through the toxicity and find myself a safe place to call home, and find a true love that I needed and knew that I deserved, and really feel like being myself and not changing myself to make somebody else happy is really what Brené Brown calls belonging, what we all really need. You're not just fitting in, which is what the people-pleasing person was doing, but actually just authentically accepting myself and saying, this is who I am, love me or not. This is the way it is. And so it led me to create the companion journal, which I titled the same thing. It's Permission to Land, but instead of searching for love, home, and belonging, which is the memoir, the journal is Permission to Land, Personal Transformation Through Writing. So this is available. I have it on a writable PDF, because some people like to type it better, and some people want to actually have pen and paper. So I published it in a very thin little paperback, but there's over 100 pages of writing prompts that basically walk people through the same questions I asked about my own life, so that they can experience the healing and the catharsis of their own long look back and their own journey into their past. And then I created an expressive writing workshop on a Zoom video, basically, with Google Slides, walking people through about a dozen or so of the writing prompts from the journal book and some art pieces. With my high school class, as I do now every day, I do a quick write, and I put up a quote, or I put up a piece of art or a photograph, and they have to write for 5 minutes. It's like a 5-minute writing challenge. And so I sort of combined that idea with the journal book questions for this expressive writing video, and basically walk people through the process of expressive writing to excavate their own lives and get in touch with their own soul and their own healing and their own past, and sort of put the past to bed in a way that they can appreciate their present and figure out what they want to do in the future. And so the video is meant to be stopped and started as you time yourself and your writing, and hopefully it leads them into really falling in love with what this type of writing can do for them, and then maybe they'll be motivated to try it through my journal book. And then what I'm in the process of doing now is writing a longer course that not only will help people sort of excavate their lives and experience the expressive writing, but do for them what this whole memoir process has done for me in helping them find their voice. So it starts out a little bit for everybody and then tries to turn everybody into a bit of a writer, whether they're going to publish or not. But
well, I want to, journals have been my therapy, ever since. I feel like almost every writer probably has a stack, like you said, a Rubbermaid bin of journals. And I actually, now that I'm moving this week, I actually had to put all my journals in a big bin like that as well. Now, the thing is, like, I have a really crazy love-hate relationship with writing prompts. I tend to be like, oh, I don't know. Because I know they're, some of them are just more technical, and some of them, like you said, yours are crafted to be in a more healing process. So tell us, like, why, I know you mentioned like they help heal, but why are like 100 writing prompts in this order? Like, what makes them a little bit different as far as like what they bring us to help us as writers?
Okay, so I have been in therapy for 30 years, 3 different therapists. The one I'm with now is like my Jewish mom. I just adore her. We have a different sort of therapeutic relationship. She actually wrote one of the endorsements, actually the endorsements for both of my books. And she helped me conceptually figure out how to structure the journal book. And I kind of followed the same pattern of that I followed with the memoir, and start with somebody's childhood and help them remember things about their grandparents and their family of origin, and what about their home made them feel safe, and what kinds of things about their family traditions they would like to, that they keep alive in their own present, and that they would like to communicate or pass along to their own current children or future children, depending on how old they are. And then more things about their first friends and their cousins and their family, and then work their way through adulthood and choices with romantic partners, and choices through careers and education. And I'm kind of working my way through chronologically through somebody's life, and then how they envision things for their future. So the journal book is really meant more for creating somebody else's own vision of their lives, like basically writing their own memoir for themselves, more than it is for the typical writer to help somebody be a better writer. So the journal's really psychological catharsis and healing and personal growth. The writing course that I'm working on is more, starts in that foundation, but more geared towards people who want to write as a creative outlet more than a psychological therapeutic device.
Right.
So that's where I'm headed.
Have you seen a lot of people, I'm sure people are taking up journaling in times of COVID, where you are alone with yourself, you're alone with your head, you're probably going through old pictures because there's nothing else to do in your house. Right. How has that maybe either helped understand or helped women understand, like, maybe their childhood? How has your teachings helped other women during this time differently than they would?
Yeah, it actually, I had a conversation with my mom's best friend, who I grew up with as an aunt, and she was telling me about a marriage encounter therapy weekend that she went on with her husband in probably the late 60s or early 70s, and how the marriage encounter instructors used guided journaling like this to help the two spouses figure out how they felt about their marriage and how they felt about their life. And then they swapped journal books with each other. And she, even though she had that experience, she was interested in starting journaling. She's in her 70s and hadn't ever, after that, it's been 40 years since she had done that with her husband. She hadn't ever sort of sat down and written, and she really wanted to, but didn't know where to begin. And so questions like this that are in my journal book gave her launching off points. Even if she didn't continue to write about that prompt for the extended period of time, or it gave her a place to begin. And she could say, okay, so I'm going to start out writing about my grandmother, and then all this other stuff showed up and that she wasn't really thinking about, but was in there that she needed to get out. And what I'm finding with these, I started a Facebook group called Permission to Heal, Safe to Fly, that we have like 500 and some odd people in there, and people are talking about journaling and healing, and all sorts of stuff is coming out because everybody's much more stuck in their homes over the last several months than ever before. And the writing groups that I'm in on Facebook and Instagram and so on, this is what people are talking about. There's a whole lot of conversation coming out now that at least I wasn't aware of it. Maybe it was going on, and because I didn't have all of this extra time to spend digitally, I didn't notice it. But I really think that it's really because of COVID that it's all coming out. And people are talking about mental health and awareness of their own choices, and making healthier patterns for their own behavior and their own relationships, and what to expect, and how to keep their boundaries high, and how to feel safe saying no, and choosing relationships based on trusting their inner voice and trusting that they are worthy of love and belonging and respect without having to please somebody else, like this all coming out. I have a regular Monday night Zoom call with my high school girlfriends, and I feel like I'm in more contact with them because of the quarantine than we were before. We saw each other regularly, but to be able to speak weekly and have like 2 hours on these Zoom calls, this is what we're all talking about. We're all in different spots. Like I have one friend who's been married for 25 years and has grown kids, and she and her husband are still together. And I went through my first marriage and 10 years of dating, and now I'm remarried, and my husband and I have 4 grown kids and 5 grandchildren. And, how are we dealing with it? And then there's 2 others who are 3 or 4 others who are divorced and dating in their 40s and 50s. And, so it's all coming out. And I think it's amazing. And I think we all need to harness this interconnectedness and this continuum of conversations and keep allowing our creativity to drive our introspection and our relationships. I'm also a painter, so I've been selling, people aren't really buying things because money is tight because so many people are out of work, but I've had a couple of online Facebook auctions to kind of get some money going and to get my art out of there because I have no space left. And I donated a painting to the Long Island Art League that they then used the proceeds of because they can't run classes in the Art League anymore because of the social distancing and so on. And that business hadn't been opened yet. And I just find like people are hungry for discussion about mental health, and they're hungry for discussion about creativity and inspiration to bring forth their own, whether it's writing or it's visual arts or, I've got a friend who's producing music in her own house, and she does this amazing like rhythmic rapping poetry, and she's just burgeoning with ideas, and she's just always on Instagram now, like really putting forth so much incredible stuff. I think people are just, because we're sort of stuck in our homes, there's all of this undistracted by outside forces. It's all just bursting forward. And everybody's just this amazing, beautiful cacophony of creativity. It's inspirational, actually.
Yeah, and the hunger is where
that's the word I was hunting for.
You got it right on the nail there, because people, I think that we always backburned our creativity for so long because of life, right? Getting in the way. And I think COVID really slowed that down for us. But the hunger to have the conversation, the important conversation, especially one about mental health. Did you maybe, since you've lived through a lot of this, did you see what was stifling people from having that conversation before? Was it shame? Like, I wonder, shame, guilt, it could be like stigma. I mean, what do you think?
I think that this experience with narcissism is not as limited as I used to think. And I think so many marriages, so many relationships, so many people have been negatively affected by narcissism. And I think because all these conversations are happening, I think it's drawing out those reluctant sharers, the ones who thought they were alone, the ones who were really affected by the gaslighting of their narcissists, that they're finally realizing, I do deserve a voice. I do deserve happiness. I'm not alone in how I feel. The narcissist in my life was not right about me. They were just trying to shove me in a shoebox so that they could control me. And so I'm loving seeing the liberation and the growth and discovery of freedom and joy and, oh my God, I can do this. Like, I have a friend of mine who had been in a 25-year marriage with a narcissist who really squashed her and made her feel totally insignificant. And the first question in my journal is to come up with 15 positive words about yourself. And I just started that with her through a Facebook message conversation, and she couldn't come up with 15 words. And it was so hard for her. And we just had this like long conversation, and she was reading my memoir, and it helped her open herself up to herself. And then suddenly it opened up the dam and all the words came forward. And she's like, but how can I say that about myself? It's not true. And I'm like, bullshit. Of course it's true.
The other stuff
you can do this. The other stuff, that self-limiting stuff, that gaslighted BS stuff, that's the stuff that's not true. And watching her come out of her shell now, and she's starting to date, and she's really questioning how she looks about things, and she's posting pictures for all of us to look at these outfits, and do I like this, and how do I like that? And she's realizing what I learned a bunch of years ago while I was dating. Dating in my 40s was a very vastly different thing. And when I started trying to find love after my divorce, I was still doing that, trying to please other people. How do I shape myself from the inside out? How do I shape myself so that that other person that I'm sitting across the table from is going to like me? And then somewhere along the way, I figured out that it really was irrelevant if that person across the table liked me or not. It didn't matter at all if that person liked me. What mattered was if I liked the version of myself that I got to be in that give and take, in that relationship. And it was an epiphany, because I had been given dating advice by my grandmother, who was born in 1915. She's the one who gave me dating advice, to always make myself in the image that I think the guy would like. So pretend you like the Three Stooges, pretend you like football, pretend you like all this other stuff so that he will like you and you can win a husband. And so that's what created the template in my head, amongst other things. And it wasn't until I was probably 44, 45 years old that I went, that's some serious level of misguided BS. That's just not healthy.
I love you, Grandma, but that's not.
No.
It's not true. Yeah, it's a different time, and like also a lot was at stake if you were married, right? Like right. It was harder for a woman to have a higher paying job that could support herself. So now it's like I make the money and right. I can run a business, so yeah.
Exactly. It would be nice to have love in my life, but it isn't necessary. I'm fine. I own my own home. I have my own business. I have a job. I'm financially secure. I'm a great mom. I could do it by myself. I'm good.
Exactly. But I like this rewriting the script in your mind, because it is true. Like after narcissistic abuse, and it took me years for this too, it's just the level of shame you feel.
Exactly.
Because remember, it's not like you can just say when you walk away from the narcissist, all their gaslighting just mysteriously disappears. It's a scar, and it takes a long time to go away. So the fact that this woman, and you also as well, but this woman, when, like you said, just 15 words, when you can't count to 15 words about yourself, then that scar is still visible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it's just the shame you carry from just that abuse. And, for anyone who's ever felt it, and just anyone who's had to carry it for a long time, like, you can leave it behind. There is a future, we promise. You just got to get away from that narcissist.
Absolutely. And there are so many people who, like you said earlier, confuse the love with the abuse, and feel like, how can I leave him? Or her? I love this person. And they don't give themselves enough time to get used to being on their own. And it's hard. It's not like I divorced my husband and I moved out and everything was instantaneously fabulous. I would wander around my house and cry. I didn't become a mom to be a mom part-time and to co-parent with him. And so the kids were at their father's house, and I'd wander around my house crying, smelling their pillows. It was like really pathetic. Like, so I was a Mrs. and now I'm not, and I'm a teacher and I'm a mom. Where's Marcy? It took me a few years of really intense self-introspection and buckets of tears to figure out who this person is in here and help her bring her voice forth. And what I always felt like there was more to me than, I still do, there's more to me than what's already here. How to do this? How do I move forward? And I think that it's daunting to a lot of people when they feel like they're alone. And so they need people, podcasts like this, people like you, Christina, people like me, books like that I wrote. I love memoir. I read every single word Brene Brown's written. I've read every single word Elizabeth Gilbert's written. I've read Tara Westover's, and I've read Glass Castle and Educated.
Oh, I love
and
Glass.
all of these phenomenal memoirs, these phenomenal, very strong, vocal, beautifully written things written by these women. Amanda Palmer's book about asking was foundational in me learning how to ask for help. Because you grow up a people pleaser, you don't want to ask for help. You grow up feeling like you're not worthy of love. The last thing you want to do is admit that you can't do something. So, it made me independent. It made me a go-getter. It made me not shy of going after things that I wanted. But at the same time, I was terrified to ask for help and to admit that vulnerability. And my husband now still says, I'm walking around now with a broken foot. And so he's like, would you sit down and let me get you that glass of water instead of getting up again? Like, even little silly things like that, I still have trouble asking for. And a lot of people have trouble asking for things and admitting that. And it's hard to get over all of that shame, but they're not alone, and it's possible.
What will help you get over asking, and for anyone who has this trouble with asking, is being an entrepreneur. You have to go in and ask for the sale. You have to go in and ask for feedback. You have to ask for a review, right? You have to follow up with the customer. That's how
I got on this podcast. I asked you if I could be a guest.
Oh yes, you were very persistent too, and yeah. So and believe me, I get asked a lot, but I always want to look for the unique angle, and I always want to feature a woman who has something to say to help. I always think about the woman who is listening to this, and she's written stories since she was a kid, has notebooks and journals full of stuff, but just doesn't know how to get started or feels lost. And I think of the younger woman I was, where I was just like, I just want to write. I just want to be able to write and do what I love to do and tell the story in my head. Right. And I always think about her, and who can talk to her the best. And yeah, I always admire persistence. But yeah, I feel like the more you become an author, an entrepreneur, the more you just have to get over the people pleasing and just start asking and bothering people. Don't think of it as bothering people, but you really have to.
Well, you're tapping into someone else's expertise. No woman is an island. I can read all the books and listen to all the podcasts and be in any webinar I can get myself into, but you have to ask for advice. And how did you do this, to get inspiration and skills and tactics, and even just like, use that app, that app will help you do that, whatever.
Oh yeah. I selfishly feel like every writer comes on here and tells me how they did it. And it helps so much, because now I cut the curve by so much. But so you're not just doing the business, you're also doing YouTube as well. So you're doing you've got your hands on a lot of different things right now.
The YouTube channel is in its very beginnings. It's still in its infancy, and I'm still trying to figure out how to best use this platform to help other people, because that's really the whole point. I wrote the book, and I figured if I never published it, at least it was helping myself. And if I had only 100 readers, at least 100 people would benefit from it. And it isn't really about about selling books. It's about helping souls. It's about helping people and helping them figure out who they are and how to be live their best lives. And so that's really the crux of the YouTube channel, which I entitled "What's Up, Marcy?" Because it was actually named by my students, because I tell so many stories in my class that, once I take attendance, they're like, all right, so what's up, Mrs. Brockman? What's up today? And I didn't want to use Mrs. Brockman because that's a little strange. So I just used my first name. But so my students named it. And there aren't that many subscribers yet, although videos get watched. And basically what I'm doing is talking about stuff like this. I do shorter form videos talking about mental health and my own journey through anxiety. I just went on Lexapro a few months ago, and there are a lot of people who are talking, who still feel shame about being on medication because mental health things have such a stigma still, even in 2020, which I don't get. You know, if I needed insulin because I was a diabetic, nobody would bat an eye. But because I have anxiety, and that affects my life, and I'm on Lexapro, some people are like, oh, you know, but who cares? You know,
Yeah.
I need a little serotonin fix in my brain. That's fine. What's the deal?
Yeah.
You know,
When I worked professionally in my corporate job, I struggle a lot with anxiety too. So I feel like that's also a symptom of narcissistic abuse.
Absolutely.
Wow, lots of anxiety, or you just have a very anxious personality. I struggle with it so much, and that was definitely a stigma in my professional job. And my professional job actually made it worse because I couldn't sleep at night, and I actually took more anti-anxiety pills. And then it wasn't until I left and I did my own thing that it stopped. Not that being an entrepreneur solves all your problems, it actually multiplies them, but like,
at least you're in control.
Yeah, but at least I could sleep better. I wasn't stigmatized. And with my team, I would never, like, if someone needs a day or a personal day, or if someone needs, I would never stigmatize that for them at all in any way. In fact, as a leader, you're supposed to help, and you're supposed to nurture people through these hurdles and make them better. Otherwise, you're not good at what you do. At least that's my,
I agree.
That's my 2 cents. But yeah, it was really
humanity first.
Yeah. And the, I love that. You got to be at somewhere in your house.
Yeah.
That says math. Cause I do too. Wow. We have so much in common. Oh my goodness.
We do.
So I have some closing questions that I love to ask.
Sure. Okay.
So first I want to ask, what is your definition of success?
My definition of success, off the top of my head, is being able to do what brings me happiness, knowing that it is benefiting other people. Yeah, that's it.
And do you feel that coming in, like the more women you help and the more people that you help with your journaling, are you seeing more in that come in?
Yeah, all the things that I do, my paintings give people joy when they can see them hanging in their houses. It brings them happiness. I feel that way with my teaching career. I've been able to touch the lives and be touched by thousands of students over the 25 years that I've been doing it. And it's the most amazing thing. And to start hearing and feeling the ways that I've been able to touch the lives of men and women, mostly women, with my book and the journal book, and I'm getting lots of messages through various social media outlets and stuff about how inspirational my story has been to a lot of people. I mean, my book's now on 4 continents, and so I'm getting from everywhere: Australia and South America, Europe, North America. It hasn't gone anywhere else yet, I don't think. Oh, Canada. So, that's still North America. It's an amazing, wonderful thing. And I feel like I definitely am on the right path, and that I definitely made the right decision publishing this book. Or books. Yeah, it's good. I'm thrilled.
And first books, I'm sure there's many more in the works. Right?
Yeah, it's just so far these 2, but yeah, I think I'm going to do fiction next.
We'll nice. See. So what is the best advice? There's that young woman out there, like we mentioned before, struggling with her stack of journals and her creative, all her stories. What's your best advice to her out there?
My best advice to her out there is to trust herself, to not feel badly about saying no to things that don't feel right to her, and to trust that voice. And to set high standards for herself and keep healthy boundaries, and not ever feel or succumb to the pressure to lower them, because she is worthy of great things.
What's one standard that it's non-negotiable for you?
What's one standard that's non-negotiable for me?
That you've set for yourself?
I'm never going to allow anyone to ever make me feel small again. Never going to allow anyone to try to put me in that box or to try to control what I am or make me feel badly about having a skill or having a voice. Because too many times that has been the case in my life. And I can't go backward. I refuse.
I love it. I love it. And yes, I would say always keep that standard. I set standards for myself too. And that's the thing. Once you realize that everything's okay if you don't bend, like you're not going to lose out if you have to cut someone out of your life because you're holding yourself to that standard.
Right.
It's just so freeing, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us today. In Creative Minds, you can find permission to land, searching for love, home, and belonging, and permission to land personal transformation through writing with over 100 pages of guided writing prompts and questions to help you uncover your past, illuminate your present, and guide you into your own bright, hopeful future with more clarity, awareness, confidence than ever before. Like she said, it takes you from, childhood all the way through your adult life. Let that healing process lead you into some of your best writing. And both books are available at marcybrockman.com as well as Amazon, Barnes & Noble's book review, and most places and major retailers where books are sold. Original art, custom print, scarves, masks, all of it is available at Marcy's online store. And she has a special right now, end of summer 20. Use that coupon code for 20% off. You can also take her free expressive writing workshop on YouTube channel, What's Up Marcy? And you can join the Facebook group, Permission to Heal, Safe to Fly. So all of those goodies are available. Click the link in the description below. And Creative Minds, as always, keep creating, and we will see you on the next episode.